right, welcome back to the Living the Life show. I'm your host, Columbus Code, and I got a very special guest with me today. Season 2 is going to be all that and a bag of chips, and we have a wonderful guest. Kent Dickerson is our guest today. How's it going, Kent?
It is going great.
Wonderful, wonderful. We have a great show today as he shares his testimony. But before we get to the meat, I always like to get to know our guest a little better. So I give some random quick questions that you have to answer. Never know what's coming at you. All right, you ready?
Okay, sure.
Right. Tell me, what's your favorite food item of all times?
Favorite food? Oh, wow. I'm one of these people that have many favorites. I don't care if it's movies or books or whatever. I have a hard time picking just one.
Just one, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. But I will say that I'm really a dessert guy. I mean, I love sweets. That's my weakness.
Me too.
And I would say probably my favorite sweet is Italian wedding cake.
And I've never had
coconut
that.
and pecans and
I've
all
never
that.
had it. I'm gonna have to try that one day.
Yeah, it's good.
See, I learn stuff from my guests when I ask them these questions, because then I get like ideas to go try stuff. All right, what's the best book you've ever read? The best book ever? Not counting the Bible. Not counting the Bible.
Another one of those questions.
Mm-hmm.
I may have to just go with the best one I've had lately.
That'll work.
And that is, really enjoyed a little book called Experiencing the Trinity. And I should have had the name ready of the author, but I don't have it on my
Experiencing the Trinity. I'm sure we can Google it. We'll find it out. Yeah.
And what's really amazing about it is he explores the concept that the Holy Spirit, the Son, and the Father are all in perfect relationship. And then they turn around and invite us to join that relationship. And that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
And so, I've had a lot of great contemplation, just checking through that book just a little at a time. I tend to have one book that I'm going through slowly for my morning devotional, and so that one is recent that just really impressed me.
So you said it's a little book. So is it like a short, quick read?
Yeah, it's 5 chapters.
Okay.
So it's pretty short. I kind of wish he would lengthen it with some personal experiences, but just the depth of his study is good enough. It really gets you going.
I'm gonna check it out. All right, which person in the Bible do you feel like you identify with the most, and tell me why?
Okay, I probably identify with David the most, because I'm a music guy. I love singing. I'm really touched in my heart with song, and so we have that in common. I don't think I'm up to David's greatness on being a warrior, but I'm working towards it. I mean, spiritually, I am really working most on trying to change the atmosphere, shall we say, and get people to contemplate on God and the nature of God, and that there's power there. And so that's,
So you've been practicing with your slingshot at all?
I have. I've only used the old American style with the rubber bands,
the strap that you pull back.
Yeah, strap.
All right. So, what's your favorite book of the Bible?
Favorite book of the Bible? For most of my life, it's been 1 John. And that still remains one of my favorites. But lately, I've really been getting into Hebrews.
Okay.
And so, I have to kind of throw both of them.
Got to lean on toward Hebrews. I'm a Proverbs guy. I love Proverbs. Okay. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love all of them, but Proverbs is the one I just seem like no matter when I read it, it's just you walk away licking your chops. It's just another good word.
There's a lot of depth there. Yeah,
A
I
lot of
get into the
depth.
Proverbs myself and Psalms as well.
Yeah. Sometimes you
Those are
walk away from Proverbs and you're still scratching your head like, huh, I still don't get it. Man, Lord, you're gonna have to help me with that one. All
that's
right. So
true.
what's the best advice you've ever received about handling temptation?
Okay, the best advice I've ever received. I would say um, get real. I mean, other than the advice I got from the Lord,
Hmm.
which was deeper on having a focus on Him, um, I would say getting real with my brothers. That was encouraged. I went to a walk to Emmaus and then was involved in Tres Dias weekends. And these 3-day weekends, they have a tendency to get real with one another, encourage you to do that. They encourage you to have somebody that you are uh, every week going through a spiritual review with,
Mm,
and where it's more than accountability, where you're not just looking at the negative, you're looking at the positive stuff.
hmm.
And so what time this last week was I feeling the closest to the Lord? What great time of worship did I have? What new thing did God show me in His Word? Some very positive things. But then, yeah, we get into, okay, how is my struggle last week?
Right, right.
Where did I maybe go wrong in my reacting to people or
Mm,
to situations, and didn't have the best thought uh, in my head, and yeah, and just going through those kind of things, and yeah, of course, as one who struggled with pornography for decades, um, this was one of the ways it really came to be overcome.
mm. So having a good accountability partner or accountability group.
Yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
and you need time. It's If you're going to have a real spiritual review, you need at least 30 minutes per person to
Mm,
share. And so you can meet with one other guy on a lunch, but if you're going to have more than that, you're going to have more time.
yeah, yeah. All right, so you just mentioned about your struggle with pornography, and that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about your walk with God through this time, this ordeal, and how He has brought you for, as they would say, a mighty long way. Continuing to strengthen you and bring you up through these situations. I think about how a lot of people feel like porn doesn't hurt anybody because they're not doing anything to anyone but themselves. I think that's what a lot of people's mindsets are. When you hear that statement, what wisdom would you offer someone who had that thought process that porn really doesn't hurt anybody?
Okay, well, it hurts yourself, and that's the big that's the big thing.
Hmm.
It hurts yourself, and so I just realized, got a phone call. I got to shut this thing off. Okay, now we won't be bothered again. Um, and so it is what it is doing to your mind
Hmm.
is pretty extensive.
Mm.
I'm I'm the type of guy who I never tried drugs. I never smoked cigarettes. I never got drunk. It was always um, didn't appeal to me, the whole concept of getting into something that I can't control and that is going to have a big um, effect on me. I want to avoid that. Well,
Hmm.
I went wrong with the pornography. I didn't have that same thought
Yeah.
because it does. It takes over your mind in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Uh, and I don't know if you're aware of how the mind works, but a lot of times we build pathways in our mind. And so when you're looking at pornography and indulging, you're kind of driving on a dirt road and you're deepening the rut a little bit. And
Hmm.
every time you do it, you deepen it a little bit more. And as you get these ruts that are extreme, they will hijack your thinking. You can be thinking about something totally different, but
Right.
you get just a little close and you're going to fall in that rut.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's very, very damaging. And really, it's been proven the chemical things that happen in your brain with
Hmm.
pornography are very similar to hard drugs.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of times people, when they don't have the same struggles, we try to rank addiction. We try to rank that's an issue I would never have, but we struggle with this issue. And
Right.
I honestly believe, and I'm prayerful that everyone that listens to today's podcast or watches today's podcast will be blessed by this, even if porn isn't their addiction, but they're struggling with something else. The concepts that you're sharing or will share with us today will be something they can use to help them in their area of weakness or their area of sin or their area of addiction as well. So just because they hear the title of porn and they go, "Oh, that's not my issue," but maybe my issue is gambling. Okay, maybe my issue is I'm addicted to spending money. I'm addicted to all these other things, and I'm just
Mhm.
prayerful that as you share your journey with overcoming addiction to pornography, we can take those same principles and apply them to these other areas in our lives if porn isn't one of them, and definitely apply it to that if we have that struggle as well. So how old were
Absolutely.
you? How old were you when you recognized that porn was an issue for you?
Well, I knew it from the beginning. Well, not because that was when I was 10, and my best friend and I found Polaroid pictures that had
Mm.
fallen out of the trash can. And even at 10, we automatically knew this was not something you take home and show mom.
Right.
It's like, no, this is something we got to keep secret. And yeah, I didn't realize it then, but then later I'm older and I'm dumpster diving, and boys can find all kinds of things that are neat in the trash to
Mm.
recycle. And so I really thought about those pictures, and I was missing my best friend because I'd moved away from Texas to Colorado. And um, I thought about those pictures, and so I thought, well, let me make sure we don't have something like those pictures in the trash. And sure enough, I found Playboys,
Mm.
and yeah, that was when the addiction really started. And um,
And
it
this is age 10?
well, no, with the Playboys, that was more like 15.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So later,
Mm.
and they yeah, they were something I knew I had to hide. And I've always felt guilty, though. I always felt I was grown up in a strong Christian home, and
Mhm.
knew that this wasn't right,
Mm.
but I wanted to please God very deeply, but
Mhm.
I also wanted to have my own little secret.
Yeah, I want to
And
indulge my flesh, but please God at the same time.
exactly,
Yeah.
and that just doesn't work.
Mm. Yes, I mean, thinking about that, what you just said, you hid it. You knew it was wrong at the age of 10. This is not something to take home to mom. And going back to the first question I asked you about, what advice would you give someone who their thought process was that porn doesn't hurt anybody? What's wrong with it? But if it was nothing wrong with it, you wouldn't hide your porn, right? So
Yeah,
if someone comes
exactly.
over the house, you don't have all your porn DVDs next to your regular DVDs. They're in a box under your bed, in a closet somewhere no one can find them. And it's like I tell my students, anytime you have to hide something from others, more than likely it's not a good thing. If you think about it from that standpoint, you know what? This might be one of those tricks the enemy tries to pull over me. And thinking about the enemy, how ironic it is for you to go dig in the trash, those fall out of the trash, and you go look in the trash later, and then you find Playboy. What's the odds you're gonna find Playboy in the trash? It's just, what are the odds? But the enemy knows exactly how to place things in our path that will derail us for what we might think is no big deal, but he has plans to derail us down the road for. And now looking at you now, You know, you are speaking this truth that is liberating other men because you were willing to honor God and willing to hear God instead of indulge and just continue to stay broken in your addiction. You allowed God to free you, and now that you're out there trying to free the rest of us who may have these same issues and same struggles. So I commend you and I appreciate you for, you know, letting your light shine. Just from watching the other interview that you were in, I sense the passion you have to pull others out of the pits that they've slipped in. And I think that's honorable, because a lot of times when we get set free, I'm free, it's every man for himself. And it's like, I know you know the pain of that choice. You want to shield and keep us from making those same decisions. So I thank you for that. I thank you for that, and your willingness to share this insight with the rest of us.
You're welcome, Columbus. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. All right. So I wrote here in my notes, you know how sometimes people say, because the Bible doesn't say thou shalt not. I
Right.
mean, is it really wrong? I mean, because he would have said thou shalt not. Like, I have searched the Bible and it doesn't say thou shalt not watch porn. Thou shalt not look at porn. Uh, what encouragement would you offer someone who felt like because the Bible doesn't say thou shalt not, then do what you want to do?
I think Jesus's words are pretty clear that when he says that when you look upon a woman to lust after her, you have already committed adultery in your heart. That is really strong.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's like, okay, I'm not hurting anybody. Well, I'm married.
Right.
I'm committing adultery. Well, say you're not married. Well, you're committing fornication.
Right.
You know, you're breaking you know, some laws that God made pretty clear all along. And the thing is you're thinking you're not hurting anyone, but you, as I say, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting your mind. If you are married, you are, you know, betraying your spouse. You're building trouble in your own sex life as a married man, because it will. I mean, I don't know if you've happened to have seen it several years ago. Time magazine devoted the issue to pornography, and they were looking at it from a secular, you know, reasoning and how much damaging it was. And yeah, they had one article, the main one they were interviewing in the article, he wasn't married, but he wanted to have a good sex life, and porn had ruined his sex life where he couldn't possibly have a decent sex life. And yeah, so you're doing things to yourself, you're doing things to others that you don't know. And really, of course, most important, you're putting a barrier between yourself and God in the relationship you could have with him. You know, if you would be focusing on him and drawing towards him, you would be moving up, you know, on the spiritual ladder, where you're getting closer to God and you're changing yourself in many ways. And that's the most sad thing about it.
Yeah. It's a subtle attack on us that we don't realize we're under until it's too late. Like you said, I mean, you literally cannot even enjoy your spouse because you're thinking about Sally Sue in that movie or the Susie Ann in that magazine, and your wife doesn't do what that woman did. And now, you know, you're trying to suggest that she perform acts that you saw on a movie, and she feels uncomfortable with that. Now you have issues with that. And it all, you know, it all started with a couple pictures you found in the trash, right? Who would have ever thought that would lead to, you know, and that's how the enemy is. He is so shrewd. He doesn't show us the extreme side of our, what we would consider pleasure. He shows us the fun side or the exciting part. He's not going to show us that we're going to lose our spouse. He's not going to show us that we're going to lose our kids. He's not going to show us that I don't feel comfortable going to church because some of the brothers know about my issues. You know, all these things he's not going to show us until it happens. And then we have to have the what's the word I'm looking for? We have to swallow our pride and fall on our face and ask God to pull us, let us come back home, and then to pull us out of that pit. And that's what I want to talk about next, because I think your mission, your journey that you're on is doing exactly that. You know, he's pulled you out. Now you're trying to pull others out. But why do you think, because this is such a big deal, this is a big problem, why do you think more preachers and pastors don't speak on this subject?
Well, I think it's embarrassing, you know, and so their audience, um, they're not comfortable with bringing it up, and the fact is, the vast majority of pastors, elders, uh, Bible teachers, they're not getting real. I mean, they're
Right.
not telling you their struggles. For the most part, they're like, "Hey, I'm good. You know, I'm doing good. Just
Right.
just follow my words, and you'll be good too." And well,
Do as I
that
say,
is
not as I
just
do, huh?
yeah, that's just
Mm.
not right. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and the fact is that we all have struggles.
hmm
We all have things where the enemy is pulling us in, you know,
Yeah.
and pulling us away from God.
Yeah.
And so
You
when we
you
get
mentioned about
real,
you mentioned about embarrassment. And I thought about,
yeah,
as it relates to you, what gave you the strength to overcome the stigma? I don't really want to. You've said getting real at least 4 times, and I like that term. Be
yeah.
real, get real. What do you think prompted you to have the courage now to stand before guys and tell them, guys, I struggle with this, and God has delivered me, and I want to help you as well. I want to share this with you because, again, like you said, the preachers aren't saying it because it's kind of a sensitive subject. I don't know how to address it. I feel, kind of icky when I even talk about it, but here you are doing this. How did you overcome that embarrassment, or that feeling of embarrassment, to just put it out there?
Well, first of all, I reached quite low,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where um, I ended up having an affair for a week, and then we came to our senses and broke it off, and I was just broken
Mm-hmm.
um, in that. But um, turned out my wife knew, and we went through a divorce. Now there was a lot other trouble which contributed to that, including a lack of love life.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, I really don't think I would have ever had an affair if I hadn't had the pornography affecting my mind.
Mm.
You know, it was something I never dreamed I would do, and um, I had been a preacher, and one reason I got out is because I just didn't have the spiritual strength for the job. You
Mm.
know, that's what I know now. I'd given you other reasons at the time, but I
Mm-hmm.
lasted only 5 years after Abilene Christian as a preacher, and then got out. And so then eventually, yeah, many years later, we went through this divorce, and then got remarried. And um, it was really when I found myself back in the Playboys on my second marriage.
Mm.
My we were overseas. My wife works for the U.S. Army, and we were in Germany. And I took an advanced course in watchmaking down in Switzerland. And while I was there, I had the pull to get a American Playboy and get back into it.
Mm.
And it was really at the end of that, um, probably 2 months of being back in the Playboys. I needed to throw them away because I was having to move back. And it was there. I just got absolutely desperate. I begged God for help. I also told him, I'll do anything you want me to do. Now, I had thrown out the Playboys many times, and I had asked for forgiveness, I'd asked for help, but I was finally in a place where God could really take me where he had for me to go. And so when I agreed to that, I say, okay, God, whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do. But we're getting rid of this. And within weeks of returning to Germany, I got asked to help with a Trace Diaz weekend and asked to speak for the first time. And every speaker at these weekends is asked to give some personal testimony. And I didn't say, well, God, you want me to do this? I knew it. I mean, this is exactly, okay, Lord, I said I'd do anything you want me to do. I got to give testimony. Here we go. We're gonna get real with the guys. And that weekend there were 45 men there, and I talked about my struggle. I talked about how the damage it had helped do in my life, and then I was speaking about Bible study, and I said, I never really studied lust. Here it was my problem, and I never really took a deep look at lust in the Bible. And I'm going to do that now. And so I'm going to urge you as well, get into Bible study and fight the things, whatever your little secret is. And it turned out almost to a man, the 45 men either got up publicly and said so, or they came to me privately and said, I struggle with the same thing. And, up until then, you're like, think you're alone. You think like, well, I'm going to church and I'm the only pervert in the room. Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
You have brothers who are equally struggling, and just talking about it, getting it out in the open makes a difference. And no, it's, you're probably not going to want to do what I do, where you're talking publicly about it regularly and talking to women as well as men. But just having light shone in the darkness, it has power. And you will be able to have much more success of really attacking this problem when you shine light on it.
Yeah. Now, do you remember when you spoke that day, were you super nervous, or was it like, did God like empower you with like a anointing, just like, whoa, I just feel like this is now my purpose in life? Like, do you remember that, how you felt that day?
Well, it was a mix. I was some nervous, but actually maybe not the amount that I might have thought I would be. So yeah, he gave me the calmness to go ahead and get through it and do it well.
Yeah.
And then I continued to talk about it regularly on these weekends and at men's studies, and just I started getting into it, and sharing with guys. And of course now I write, I give seminars, and just in normal conversation, you meet somebody, what do you do? That's what a guy's going to ask you. And then I tell them, and so I share right then, and it's pretty amazing how often they say, "Oh, I struggle with that too."
Yeah.
Just because somebody else gets real first, then they're willing to say, "Yeah."
You've given them the courage to get real as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, they have a safe place now, a safe space to fight their battles. Yeah, because like you said, as long as we think we're alone, we want to conceal this. But once I find out, oh man, I'm not the only one. I think about even as a father, sometimes raising my sons, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are driving me nuts, arguing with each other all the time. And then you find out everybody's kids do that. Like, oh, okay, Thank goodness. They kind of say misery loves company. You're
Yeah.
striving to be a great father and you feel like, man, am I even succeeding? Because they're always arguing with each other. And then almost every parent you talk to says, man, my kids are always at each other. I just tell them, look, I'm not a referee in that one. They've learned to pick and choose how to just break up the disruption. And, I'm just trying to make sure there's love in my home. Love in my
Good.
home. All right, so you mentioned about writing. So, and it's funny because your wife sent me an email and she told me my book is called Recap. Your book is called Remade. And I just find that to be awesome and cool. But what propelled you to write this book, Remade? Tell us a little bit about the book and then what drove you to writing it?
Okay, well, um, I might back up just a little bit and say one more thing about the lust. So I got to a place where I hadn't looked at any pornography in a couple of years,
Hmm.
and it was successful, supposedly. But I struggled with lust every time I went to the gym,
Mm.
you know, and it just didn't feel like victory to me. And so I'm praying in the parking lot and I'm asking God, help me to cover this. Let's get rid of this too.
Yeah.
And eventually I came up, the thought was brought to my head. We had done a study called Experiencing God
Mm.
by Henry Blackaby. Great study. And I just asked God, let me experience you through the temptation. You've chosen not to take the temptation away.
Mm.
So let me just experience you through it. And that day was different. And I got on the elliptical to warm up, and I had 23 minutes at the time, I think, that I was warming up on the elliptical. And I just started saying, okay, Lord, I want to experience you. I'm in the place of temptation. And my mind was flooded with
Mm.
holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come,
Mm.
and over and over. And I'm like, oh, this is what Revelation 4 tells us is said in heaven 24 hours a day,
Mm.
over and over by the cherubim. And I thought how powerful these words must be, how important they must be. And during that reflection, the woman at that gym, was at Ramstein, Germany, the woman at that gym who was most tempting to me passed in front of me and I hardly noticed.
Mm.
It was like, okay, she passed, but that's it. I didn't notice what she was wearing. I didn't notice, think how good she's looking today. None of that. And all right, Lord, now I'm getting somewhere.
Mm.
And what he showed me is even in my repentance, I was focused too much on myself,
Wow.
on my weakness and on in my struggle. And I was focused on me. And I need
Mm.
to be focused on him because that's where the power is.
That's where the strength
And
comes from. Yeah.
yeah, and so I had that experience. I had probably 6 months of uh, just where every time at the gym, the Lord brings new things to me to contemplate on and new strengths, and the gym became my most spiritual times of the week. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. It was my kind of last holdout of deep temptation,
Mm.
and now it's the most spiritual. So,
Wow.
and then God brought me another pretty fantastic experience in the mountains. We went to Edelweiss, which is the Army's really great retreat center in Germany. It's on the border with Austria. Fantastic area with the mountains just being amazing.
Mm.
And I went out while my wife was in training one day and just sat in the mountains and took my guitar and was singing praises and just enjoying the Lord and thanking him for the beauty. And he impressed me that this is beautiful because I am beautiful.
Mm.
This is who I am. I create beauty.
Wow.
And then a little later, he impressed me with the thought that this most beautiful scene is only a dim reflection of my beauty.
Mm.
And like, wow, that really hit me in the face, because all my life I'd been chasing beauty, not just beautiful women, but I love to look at beautiful wood and rocks and minerals and gemstones, just beauty all everywhere,
Yeah.
on all what kinds of ways. And then I thought, okay, I think what the reason I'm so into beauty is because I want to see the Lord's beauty,
Mm.
and I want to see this incredible beauty that is, uh, immensely more than anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And after that, I could see a beautiful woman. You sometimes get surprised on the computer. You're doing a search and something pops up, and you're like, "Whoa, that's
Mm-hmm.
not what I need to be looking
That is
at."
not what I
And
was searching for.
yeah, and
Yeah.
um, but that can happen. And if I'm quick, I just say, "Okay, Lord, thank you for the reminder of your beauty." Your
Mm.
beauty that's tremendously greater than this beautiful woman in front of me.
Wow.
And it's like a switch turned off. Lust is just like, oh, not going to happen. If I'm having that kind of thought, lust is not going to happen.
Mm.
And so when I had that experience, I kept looking, I got to share this, man. This is so incredible.
Yeah.
And so I shared it with seminars. I shared it, like I say, with men's groups and men's retreats. Um, but I just kept thinking, I got to get this word out because this is really powerful. And that's when I started writing a book.
Mm. So
I never
it
dreamed I would write a
sounds like you
book.
learned to praise past the temptation. Like you said,
Exactly.
you were on the elliptical, and you were I don't know if you were singing it or just saying it in your head, holy, 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 holy. You're praising your way right past the temptation. And my pastor has taught us and showed us that wherever you have a weakness or temptation in your life, what you need to do is put a word on it. That was his statement. Put a word on it. So you
Okay.
search for a word in the Bible that deals with your area of weakness. And when the
Mhm.
temptation is prompted, then that word will also prompt. It'll pop up like a pop up on a computer. Bloop, bloop. Now you have two pop ups. Now you have a chance to defeat it because at least you have the word there to combat the temptation. But if there's no word there, there's no way to combat the temptation because the only thing that's there is the temptation. But when, like you said, I've learned to focus on the Father, then when the temptation comes, my focus is still on the Father. I can defeat that thought. I can look away from that beautiful woman because there's nothing wrong with admiring beauty. But if it leads to me having a lustful thought, it's gone beyond admiring God's beauty. Now it's taken me down the wrong path.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, years ago, I was talking to a guy I worked with, and he was young. Yeah, he was younger than me. I'd say young. I say young. It's funny when you get a little older, you start calling people young, and they're 30 something years old. He's a young pup, and he was looking at a young lady, and his comments were very sexual comments, and I'm like, hey, you getting ready to get married, man? You can't be looking at. He said, man, ain't nothing wrong with looking, and I told him, I said, listen to me. Looking leads. He said, what you mean by that? I said, looking leads to other stuff. And it's funny because he never forgot that comment. He told me years later, he goes, man, I'll never forget when you told me, man, looking leads. And it does. It leads to thoughts. It leads to, now all of a sudden you have different emotions that's tied to what you saw 2 weeks ago. You've totally forgot about that lady. But now all of a sudden, that pop-up pops right back up. But if you've got a word, then that word will pop up, and then the Holy Spirit can strengthen us to go, no, not today. Then, like you said, then all of a sudden that when that pop-up popped on your computer, and you said, Lord, thank you for giving me the strength to know that you're more beautiful than that. Click, that's got to go. Instead of indulging, I excuse myself from this situation.
Exactly.
Thinking about what you just said, because I wrote as a question that I want to ask you is further down, but since you brought it up, I might as well go on and get it out of the way. Where did I put it? Okay. I said here, because I know that how the enemy works, I know that he will continue to try to pull you back, right? He knows that you have experienced God's strength. You've walked in deliverance. You mentioned earlier that it didn't feel like victory. Even though I was having small wins, I didn't feel victorious. I still felt kind of trapped by this thing. I'm assuming now that you have surrendered through that desperation, you feel the victory, but I know the enemy is always lurking. He's always going to try to wait for that one moment where Kent might feel weak and
Yeah.
then jump in again. So, what do you do to make sure that you stay on alert for his sly and subtle attacks?
Okay, first of all, I think there are triggers, that you realize, okay, this kind of he's going to attack me when this is the situation.
Mm,
And so one of those triggers with pornography was always loneliness. And so, if I have a time where my wife is in the States, she's being, having training there or something, and I'm alone good while, I know, okay, I'm going to have to prepare for this
mm,
because the enemy is going to hit me with temptation. And yeah, so then I kind of bring myself back to first of all, remembering what God has done. It's one of the great things that when God has brought victories to you, you just sit back and say, okay, this is how he did it. This is where it went well. And so let me just do some good remembering here of what he's done for me.
mm.
And that's going to get me in the frame of mind. And then I want to be sure. I mean, I might every once in a while, some days I may kind of let my early morning time slide. Well, if I'm having that kind of trigger time, I have to say, okay, I can't do that today. I don't care what comes up. This is first thing in the morning.
Mm,
I'm spending my time with the Lord.
yeah. Starting your day
And
off with the right mind frame or
yeah,
mindset.
exactly. Exactly. I could say that's one trigger. Another that I have to kind of watch is entertainment. You get to where you're watching a lot of entertainment,
Hmm.
then you may be opening yourself up to the mind not being as disciplined.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's another thing. So that's another kind of temptation for me when my wife is gone. She is not really a fan of um, Star Trek and, you know, science fiction like I am. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'll binge watch while she's gone. And, but I'm like, okay, no, yeah, let's not do that because that has this tendency to open me up to where my mind's not being disciplined. So
Mm.
let me only put that in proper perspective. Just only watch one movie, only watch maybe one or two episodes, and then get back to something that's
It's going to
more
keep you
my
centered.
normal
Yeah.
things I think about.
Yeah. It's funny that you said it because I didn't even think to even bring that up as relates to just plain entertainment, because it's almost sad to say that we can't even say plain entertainment anymore. Because if we're watching a football game, the commercial comes on, it's a sexy woman. If we're watching a movie, almost every movie, there's some type of adulterous affair or there's some type of love scene that's borderline porn, right? It's like, my
Yeah,
goodness, I can't turn anywhere without looking at this stuff. And if that's your trigger, as you said, your weakness or your sin or your addiction, we have to be wise enough, or and I like the word you use, disciplined enough to know I can't even put myself in that position. I mean,
yeah,
I love something I said years ago that God placed in my spirit. We are stronger than we think we are, but we're not as strong as we think we are. And it's
mm,
like, it was the weirdest statement. We're stronger than we think we are because when you give up, you got more in you than you think you do. But you're actually not as strong as you think you are. Because sometimes we think, I can handle it. I
yeah,
can hang out with them. Just because I don't smoke it don't mean I can't hang out with the people. Well, you hang out with them long enough, and then you'll be smoking it. You'll be drinking it. If you, as the Bible says, you can't take hot coals into your lap and not expect to be burned. You're going to deal with the burns.
yeah,
So I like you said, having that discipline, understanding that loneliness is a trigger for me, so I have to manage my loneliness. I have to spend more time with the Father in these times because He'll take away that loneliness. He'll
Yes.
He'll comfort me in those lonely moments. Yep.
That's another a key is to really develop your relationship with God,
Mm.
where you're telling Him everything. You know, you're feeling a temptation. You tell God, okay, God, I'm really feeling a pull now towards, let's say, money. Where I'm or something that I would love and really want to have, and no way I can afford it. I'm feeling temptation, Lord, but I know this is not good for me.
Mm.
And just get, as I'm saying, get
Get
real with
real.
God.
There it is.
He
Get
knows it
real.
anyway. He knows all
Right.
your thoughts, and
Right.
so just share it with Him. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the beauties of the Psalms. You see all kinds of thoughts, maybe not wholesome expressed, but then they're processed through the psalm,
Mm.
and they come out, like I say, like there's several psalms where David says, "Oh, but then I remember what God has done for me,"
Mm.
and then he processes his thinking, and so that's what we need to do in our prayer life. We need to be working through processing everything with God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love even that thought of praying like that because a lot of times people we get too churchy in our prayers, instead of just talking to your father. If I call my earthly father, I'm not going, "Hello earthly father, that was who gave birth to me." It's like,
Yeah.
"Dad, what's going on, Dad?" So you approach God like, "Father, I love you so much. I am struggling right now. I really need your help. These thoughts, they will not stop coming. And if I don't want to give in, I told you I was going to be strong." When you're praying, you're talking to God like you would talk to someone in the room with you. I was reading a book years ago. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it. It's called Two Chairs.
Two
And
chairs. No,
you've heard of it?
no, I
Okay.
don't.
It's
Doesn't
called
sound
Two
familiar.
Chairs, and I can't remember who wrote it, but the concept is he starts his morning every day like you have a morning routine. Every morning he has two chairs. One sits across from him. He sits in one and God sits in the other. And he has a conversation with God every day. He doesn't start his day without sitting down and having a two chairs moment. And he said ever since he instituted that in life, life has totally changed for him. And so, like you said, as I'm having this moment, this thought of temptation or of any type of temptation, I sit down and I talk to my dad. How do I get past this? It's strong right now. This is really weighing on me. And you're open, you're real, you're vulnerable, and then all of a sudden, God is able to pour His strength into you because you're not trying to hide behind some spiritual mask. I'm not trying to be Reverend so and so or Deacon so and so on Sunday, and then I'm, Satan's spawn on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Mhm.
I'm truly pouring my heart out to God because I don't want to live that way. I remember when I told you, I promise you, I won't go back to that. And I remember crying and telling you, I won't go back to that. And now the temptation has flooded in heavier than I've ever felt it. And if you don't give me strength, I'm going to end up breaking my promise, and I don't want to do that. And if you're open like that to God, I just don't think God will hear us pray like that and not supernaturally empower us to overcome the temptation one more time. And
Yes,
I'm a firm believer that if you can win once, you can win again. So applaud that
absolutely.
small victory and get ready for the next battle because the enemy's not done. He's going to come at another time where you're weak. Yep, can't beat me that time, but don't worry. 3 more weeks from now, Ken, I'll be back. And Ken's like, nah,
Yeah.
I got this. I got this. And then your wife flies to, as you said, the States. Now, I forgot to ask you, where are you right now?
Oh yeah, I'm in South Korea.
South
So
Korea. I was
yeah,
telling someone I had the opportunity to interview today, and I said, he's in Korea. And they said, what, North Korea or South Korea? I said, you know what? I
well,
don't know. They were like,
thankfully it's South Korea. I would not
that's,
want to be in North Korea.
that's what they said. I don't think it's North Korea because, it might be a struggle for him to get that interview out.
For sure. All right.
All right, let me give you let's see here. I got one more question for you before the final question. I always end the podcast with the same final question when I have a special guest. So this is
Okay.
not the final question. This is the next to the final question. All right. No, I take that back. I flipped yours because my final question wouldn't make sense if it was not the final question. All right. So
Okay.
who
Okay.
is the person in your life that has lived so much like Christ before you that it influenced you to surrender your heart to Christ? I always love to give that person a shout out. Since the name of our show is Living the Life, I want to acknowledge those who have lived the life in such a way that it influenced others to give their heart to God.
Wow. I would have to say my mom. Uh, my mom was just a wonderful person. I never heard a harsh word said about anybody um, by her. She had this incredible spirit of loving God and loving people, and it was just watching her every day and being around her just indeed drew me in. I had no problem knowing, there was a God. It was just clearly shown to me
Shown
and
to you.
demonstrated to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So what's mom's name so we can give her a shout out?
Yeah, Shirley.
Shirley. Thank you, Miss Shirley, for being a great example. And now your son is doing the same.
She's gone on to be with the Lord, but I have no doubt that she's enjoying great things with him now.
Absolutely. And can't wait to cheer you on. So when she sees you in those, hopefully about another 50 years from now, though, unless the Lord comes early.
Well, I was going to say, I wouldn't mind if the Lord came today. I'm ready.
That'll work. That'll work. That will work. Yeah. It's a good feeling to say when you know you're ready, you can come on out today, Lord, if you want. I don't have to prolong this and continue to go through what we're dealing with. Now, that would have been my last question, but since we didn't get a chance to say a lot about it, I want to make sure that if anybody wanted to check out your book, Remade, they know exactly where to go. And if you have any of your social media info that you would like to share, I'd like you to take this time and just bless the people with that information.
Okay. Yes, my book is Remade. The subtitle's A Preacher Finds Victory Over Porn and Complaint. And so, my constant complaining is what the Lord addressed next in me. And so that's in the book as well. And that is on Amazon. And it's both e-book and print book. You can find both of them there. And my website is remadepreacher, it's all one word, .com. And you can find my blog there. And you can find out about my seminars. And then on Facebook, Kent Dickerson, author and speaker, is my public page. But if you want to friend me on my private page, I'd be happy for people to do that as well.
Is your private page just Kent Dickerson?
Yeah, okay. Just Kent Dickerson.
Gotcha. All right. I'm going to put all this in the show notes and also in the description of the YouTube channel. So I'll make sure that it's easy for them to find all this information. And again, I cannot say enough. I truly appreciate you allowing me to be a part of this journey and sharing this with the listeners of the Living the Life show, the viewers of the Living the Life show podcast on YouTube. And I pray that everyone who has watched this or who are listening to this will be tremendously blessed by your openness, by your encouragement. You know, you've explained to us that you got to recognize your triggers. You've explained to us that you got to be real. You got to be open. And then to get to that point where you're desperate and you tell God with an open heart and an open mind that you will do whatever it takes to partner with him to get you out of this. And I think that is the key is we have to get to a point of brokenness that we know for certain I can't move any further than this. This is as far as I can go. I need you to move on my behalf. And I think until a lot of times until we hit that point, we still try to figure it out on our own, and we prolong the breakthrough. We prolong the deliverance or the victory. And but you've allowed yourself to fall on your face before the Lord and cry out to him, and now he's elevated you to a point where you recognize the triggers. You recognize that you are capable of hearing the enemy's, tricks and schemes, and now you have the equipment to tell him to get on, hit the road, Jack. And now the rest of us, because we're listening to your story, also can glean from that strength and glean from that wisdom, and add these strategies to our own lifestyles, and find ourselves overcoming our temptations as well. So I thank you so much for your time, and I pray that God continues to bless your ministry and bless your engagements as you continue to lead men and women out of these pits that they're in as well.
Thank you so much, Columbus. This has been wonderful. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, good people. You know what you got to do. Let's get busy living the life. God bless.
Amen.